So I think it's important to say that these, at least so far, are all allegations.
Mayor Michael Oher, the subject of the movie The Blind Side, is suing the Tuohy family.
We don't necessarily know which side is true, but I'm here to give you guys both sides of it because the story is absolutely insane.
He was never adopted and alleges the Tuohys cut him out from film profits.
So before we get to the content, we're doing a massive giveaway from Madden 24 when it comes out, which depending on when this video is posted is either now or within the next 24 hours. There's 3 ways for you to enter. The best way is probably adding me on Snapchat. I have like 200 friends on Snapchat. It's Flight Mike Snap, and I'm just going to be posting it onto my story. The second best way is doing the same thing, but for Instagram. It's at the Flight Mike on IG, and I'm going to be posting codes onto my story as well. And then the last way is following me on Twitter at Mikerophone NFL, retweeting the tweet that you see in front of you, and turning on my notifications on Twitter. And I'll be announcing the individual winners and also posting codes there. Now that we got all that out of the way, break! Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? The story of Michael Oher is a very unique one and a very uplifting one if you think about it, because Michael Oher never really got the opportunity to succeed. His mom suffered from a substance abuse problem, whereas his father was in and out of prison until his life was unfortunately ended while he was in prison. Michael Oher would go from school to school to school, resulting in attending 11 schools within his first 9 years of being a student. So this man was really dealt a very bad hand. Luckily for Michael, at one of those schools, he met Tim McGraw and Sandra Bullock. Well, not really, that's just who played him in the movie. He would meet the Tuohy family, a strict evangelical Christian family who was very wealthy. The movie is pretty much Leanne Tuohy gets really close with Michael. Michael will move in with the Tuohys. Michael becomes friends with the Tuohy's children, Collins and Sean Jr. The Tuohys hire a tutor for Michael to make sure he maintains good grades so he could play sports, and this results in Michael being heavily recruited by a lot of top college programs, including Ole Miss, which is where he ends up going to school because that was also the Tuohy's alma mater. Now, in the movie, the NCAA received a complaint that the Tuohys compensated Michael with gifts to convince him to play at Ole Miss and would even open up an investigation on them. But Michael would eventually get cleared to play at the school and even gets to play as a freshman, which definitely resulted in some additional eyeballs on him from NFL scouts. The movie includes some very uplifting moments, like a teammate making a inappropriate comment about Leanne Tuohy and her daughter, which results in Michael beating them up. And the movie pretty much ends with Michael Oher being a player for Ole Miss. Now, this movie would drop right during the pre-draft process for the 2009 NFL draft, which is very unique, by the way. We've seen instances of very high-profile athletes coming into the NFL before. We've never seen an instance where a player quite literally had a movie about their entire life drop right as he was entering the NFL draft. This was very unique. And ultimately, you could say that Michael Oher had a very successful career. If you compare him to other NFL players, obviously, you're going to say he was just an average offensive lineman, but he was drafted in the first round of the 2009 NFL draft with the 23rd pick. He was with the Baltimore Ravens for 4 seasons, but it wasn't enough for them to pick up his 5th-year option, although he would win a Super Bowl during his time with that team. And then he would bounce to the Tennessee Titans and the Carolina Panthers, so he would play 8 years in the NFL. During that time, he would make $35 million. Although he's not necessarily going to go into the NFL Hall of Fame, he made a significant amount of money, and the average NFL fan probably is going to think that this was all because of the Tuohys taking him in and giving him a chance. Until today, because we found out that, at least what Michael Oher is alleging, The Blind Side is one gigantic lie. Now look, man, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that every single Hollywood movie is 100% accurate, because that would be a lie. Especially recently, I think some of the movies have taken a weird turn, like The Woman King, for instance. The one thing that bothers me about that story is they completely neglect to mention how she would sell children in slavery, and they would just completely avoid that part just so they could tell this wonderful story of a woman of color who became a king of a particular region. What I'm trying to say is this is nothing nothing new. Hollywood waters down their movies all the time just to make it more palatable to the viewers or to instill a specific type of message. But this seems like a completely different story. And bear in mind, these are all allegations because we're pretty much playing a game of he said, she said at this point. So according to this article from ESPN, Blindside subject Oher alleges that Tuohy's made millions off of a lie. And it opens up by saying retired NFL star Michael Oher, whose supposed adoption out of grinding poverty by a wealthy white family was immortalized in the 2009 movie The Blind Side, petitioned a Tennessee court on Monday with allegations that a central element of the story was a lie concocted by the family to enrich itself at his expense. So pretty much, Michael Oher is saying that the entire movie was a sham just so the Tuohys could make themselves richer at his expense. The 14-page petition filed in Shelby County, Tennessee probate court alleges that Sean and Leanne Tuohy, who took Oher into their home as a high school student, never adopted him. Instead, less than 3 months after Oher turned 18 in 2004, the petition says that the couple tricked him into signing a document making them his conservators, which gave them legal authority to make business deals in his name. Now, the concept of a conservatorship on paper sounds very wholesome. You typically have conservators whenever there's a person making a significant amount of money, but clearly isn't of the right state of mind for whatever reason to make those decisions. So a conservator is allowed to make those decisions on behalf of that person legally, and it could even go against what the person wishes. The most famous example of this is Britney Spears, who was in a conservatorship as well and was trying multiple times to get out of that conservatorship by saying that her father takes advantage of her, whereas the father would say that Britney Spears wasn't of the right mental state to make decisions for herself. She recently got out of that conservatorship, but it took a very long time for her to do so. The petition further alleges that the Tuohys used their power as conservators to strike a deal that paid them and their two birth children millions of dollars in royalties from an Oscar-winning film that earned more than $300 million, while Oher got nothing for a story that would not have existed without him. In the years since, the Tuohys have continued calling the 37-year-old Oher their adopted son and have used that assertion to promote their foundation, as well as Leanne Tuohy's work as an author and motivational speaker. The lie of Michael's adoption is one upon which co-conservators Leanne Tuohy and Sean Tuohy have enriched themselves at the expense of their ward, the undersigned Michael Oher. Michael Oher discovered this lie to his chagrin and embarrassment in February of 2023, when he learned that the conservatorship to which he consented on the basis that doing so would make him a member of the Tuohy family. In fact, provided him no familial relationship with the Tuohys. The Tuohy family did not immediately return phone calls Monday to numbers listed for them. So these are some pretty intense allegations. So Michael Oher thought he was signing adoption papers to be a member of the Tuohy family, but in reality, he was signing over his right to make business decisions for himself to the Tuohy family. Now, you also have to bear in mind, you're talking about a kid that didn't necessarily get the greatest education until like towards the end of his high school career, went to 9 different schools, and had 2 parents that weren't involved in his life at all. So he's a prime candidate to get taken advantage of in these types of situations, especially in business relationships. Whenever a random woman comes over and starts taking care of you, pays for your tuition, and I guess tries to get you to her alma mater, and it seems like your life is on the up and up, you're obviously going to trust that person a little bit more. And the fact that he's just realizing this right now when he's 37 years old is more of a testament to how naive Michael Oher could be. And I'm not holding that against him, but it does seem like the story fits right now because he's just discovering this right now. Oher's petition asks the court to end the Tuohy's conservatorship and to issue an injunction barring them from using his name and likeness. It also seeks a full accounting of the money that the Tuohys earned using Oher's name, and to have the couple pay him his fair share of profits, as well as unspecified compensatory and punitive damages. Since at least August of 2004, conservators have allowed Michael specifically and the public generally to believe that conservators adopted Michael and have used that untruth to gain financial advantages for themselves and the foundations which they own or which they exercise control. All monies made in said manner should in all conscience and equity be disgorged and paid over to the said ward, Michael Oher. Oher was a rising high school senior when he signed the conservatorship papers, and he has written that the Tuohys told him that there was essentially no difference between adoption and conservatorship. They explained to me that it means pretty much the exact same thing as adoptive parents, but that the laws were just written in a way that took my age into account. So Oher wrote this whenever he wrote his autobiography, I Beat the the odds. But there's a huge distinction here, because conservatorships are typically done for family members, as we mentioned in the Britney Spears example. But if Oher had been adopted by the Tuohys, he would have been a legal member of their family, and he would have retained power to handle his own financial affairs. Under the conservatorship, however, Oher surrendered that authority to the Tuohys, even though he was a legal adult with no physical or psychological disabilities. So going back to the Britney Spears example, the father alleges that Britney wasn't in the right state of mind to take care of her own affairs, and that's why he was stepping in. In this particular case, Michael Oher doesn't have any mental deficiencies. Yes, you could say he's naive, and that's going based upon a generalization from me, because I don't necessarily know the guy, but you could say that he didn't understand financial responsibility as a high school senior, because hell, I didn't understand financial responsibility until I finished college, and I had a relatively stable upbringing. I mean, if anyone handed me a conservatorship at the age of 18 with the knowledge I had back then, I probably would have signed it too. Now, the petition alleges that the Tuohys began negotiating a movie deal about their relationship with Oher shortly after the 2006 release of the book The Blind Side: Evolution of a Game, which chronicled the story. According to the legal filing, the movie paid the Tuohys and their two birth children each $225,000 plus 2.5% of the film's defined net proceeds. The movie became a critically acclaimed blockbuster, reportedly grossing more than $300 million at the box office, and tens and millions of dollars more in home video sales. The film received an Oscar nomination for Best Picture, and Sandra Bullock won a Best Actress trophy for her portrayal of Leanne Tuohy. While the deal allowed the Tuohys to profit from the film, the petition alleges a separate 2007 contract purportedly signed by Oher appears to give away to 20th Century Fox Studios the life rights to his story without any payment whatsoever. The filing says Oher had no recollection of signing that contract, and even if he did, no one explained its implications to him. That's insane. I mean, he's claiming that he got tricked into signing away his earnings to 20th Century Fox, which on one hand, don't get me wrong, I feel bad because obviously this kid's being taken advantage of, but at the same time, unfortunately, it seems like this is all legal so far. The deal lists all four Tuohy family members as having the same representative at CAA, but Oher's agent, who would receive movie contract and payment notices, is listed as Deborah Brannon, a close family friend of the Tuohys and the same lawyer who filed the 2004 conservatorship petition. The petition alleges Brannon did not return a call to her law office on Monday. Now, in the past, the Tuohys have denied making much money from the movie, saying that they received a flat fee for the story and did not reap any of the movie's profits, and what they did earn, they added, was shared with Oher. We divided it 5 ways, the Tuohys wrote in their 2010 book. Oher's court petition says he never received any money from the movie, even though he long suspected that others were profiting, according to his attorney. Whenever Oher asked questions, he did not get straight answers. And since the film's success coincided with the start of his lucrative NFL career in 2009, Oher did not take the time to fully investigate the deal until he retired in 2016. Oher eventually hired a lawyer who helped him uncover the details surrounding the movie deal and his legal connection to the people he believed were his adoptive parents. His lawyer unearthed the conservatorship document in February, and Oher came to the painful realization that the Tuohys had never adopted him. Now, this is probably the most painful part for me, because that's gotta be a horrible thing to realize in your 30s. I mean, the only people that treated you well, the people that guided you through the instability of your life, ended up just taking advantage of you and just wanting to make a buck off of you. That's a terrible realization to come to. Mike didn't grow up with a stable family life. When the Tuohy family told Mike they loved him and wanted to adopt him, it filled a void that had been with him his entire life. Discovering that he wasn't adopted devastated Mike and wounded him deeply. The petition marks a sharp break in what had been an inspiring, if unsettlingly stereotypical, feel-good story. As the movie portrayed the story, the Tuohys adopted Oher, a poor, virtually homeless, and academically challenged black teenager. They made Oher part of a functional family for the first time. They helped him catch up in school, taught him the basics of football, and how to harness his athleticism, putting him on the road to sports stardom. The truth, however, was more complicated. Oher certainly led a hard-knock life growing up, but he also had the smarts, the pluck, and plenty of help from the Tuohys and others to rise above his circumstances. It then goes into his story a little bit, and then says Oher's fortunes actually changed after a friend's father, impressed with Oher's inner drive and focus, introduced him to the principal of a private Christian school in a prosperous Memphis neighborhood. Oher began attending the school in 10th grade, even as his home life remained chaotic. He was a sports prodigy, excelling in track and field, basketball, and football, a game he had studied for years. He began playing football football for his new school in 11th grade, quickly establishing himself as one of the nation's top offensive linemen, and college scholarship offers poured in from big-time football programs across the country. Because of his unstable housing situation, Oher frequently stayed over the homes of his classmates, including the Tuohys, whose children attended the school. The petition says that the Tuohys forged a closer relationship with him once Oher's athletic prowess drew wide attention. They invited him to spend more nights at their spacious Memphis home and took him shopping. Eventually, they asked Oher to move in. They encouraged him to address them as mom and dad and said they planned to adopt him. Oher was delighted with all of that at the time, and he fully trusted the Tuohys. He would then go to play college football at the University of Mississippi, the Tuohys' alma mater. He was a two-time All-American and the first-round pick of the Baltimore Ravens in '09. It then says that Mike's relationship with the Tuohy family started to decline when he discovered that he was portrayed in the movie as unintelligent. Their relationship continued to deteriorate as he learned that he was the only member of the family not receiving royalty checks from the movie, and it was permanently fractured when he realized he wasn't adopted and a part of the family. For years, Oher has chafed at how The Blind Side depicted him, saying it hurt his football career and clouded how people viewed him. He has said that based on the film, some NFL decision makers assumed that he was mentally slow or lacked leadership skills. People look at me and they take things away from me because of the movie, Oher told ESPN in 2015. They don't really see the skills and the kind of player I am. So this story is absolutely wild. I mean, that's a horrible realization for anyone to come to, and some of the stereotypes that were created by the movie was actually found earlier on in this commentary before I read the article, so Oher's right about that. One of the Tuohys would actually go on Barstool Sports, SJ Tuohy, to speak on the lawsuit from Michael Oher's team, and this is what he had to say.
So he had issues, was suing other entities, then finds out that he wasn't technically adopted, but it's a conservatorship, and that's when he puts you guys in the crosshairs.
I'm going to preface by saying that I loved Mike at 16. I love Mike at now he's 16 and a half years old, 37, and I love him at 67. So there's not going to be any legal dossier or thing that happens that's going to maybe go like screw that guy. It's not the case. I'll be mad at him. But if he says he learned that in February, I find that hard to believe. I went back to my text today to look at. I was curious today randomly to go back to look at our family group texts and text to see what things had been said. And there were things back in 2020, 2021 that were like, if you guys give me this much, then I won't go public with things. And so I don't know that's true. I think everyone learned in past year about the conservatorship stuff because of Britney Spears, so maybe that's the case.
Now, if Oher's looking for some sort of media deal, I'm sure Netflix executives would love to make a documentary on this story, and hopefully it won't be as disappointing as the Johnny football documentary because they cut a lot from that documentary. But all in all, man, it's really hard to know who to believe here. I mean, it does look very fishy when you look at it from the lens of Michael Oher, and it's truly a terrible realization to come to. So whose side are you on? Do you believe the Tuohys, or do you actually think that Michael Oher was being taken advantage of this whole time? I'd like to hear what you have to say. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.